Hello, everyone.
Adrien to the left, please. Adrien to the left, please. Yeah. Walk to the left, walk to the left. Yeah.
You took an overnight flight? From where? Where?
Jesse?
Yes.
This is in case you get questions in German.
Oh, gotcha.
Or
Okay.
anybody else from the international press.
Okay, and it's switched on.
We're doing it in English anyway.
Okay.
In case someone
There
says
you are.
something in German.
Italian. Just pop it in. Okay. Okay. Of course, yeah. That's impressive.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues of the press. Please take your last shots. We're ready to get started. Thank you very much. Vielen Dank, liebe Kollegin. Wenn wir bitte alle Platz nehmen dürften, da senkt sich schon Hände. Bitte erstmal alle hinsetzen. Herzlich willkommen. Welcome everyone.
Where would you like?
Please have a seat. We're ready to start. Thank you. All right, all in. So, welcome everyone to the press conference of the film Manodrome in the 73rd edition of the Berlin Film Festival. It's the world premiere tonight. Thank you everyone for coming. I would love to introduce to you all the amazing talent sitting on this table, and I'll start from my right-hand side on the very end. Please welcome Philipp Ettinger, actor. Next to him, please welcome Salut Césaire, playing Ahmed. Please welcome Adrien Brody, ladies and gentlemen. That band. Transformation you have all seen on screen. Here the actor performing Ralphie. Please welcome Jesse Eisenberg. And responsible for it all, and very happy to have him back after we showed his film here in Berlin in 2017, the director John Trengrove. Welcome back. Welcome back to Berlin. I see a lot of hands. I'll come back right to you. I just wanted to start off with the first question. You have all seen the film, and I'm guessing if you're also asking yourself the same question, seeing how masculinity plays quite a role in general, but specifically in Ralphie's life. But I wonder how you came to this title, to Manodrome.
I mean, it started, a couple of years ago when I was first reading up on the so-called manosphere. It's this online community of, different clusters of communities of men who kind of group together for different reasons. And the film really became this idea of a character who just immerses himself in a world of men, and that blurs the lines between camaraderie and sexuality, and it all kind of leads to a sort of madness, a kind of a fever dream, and Manodrome emerged from that. Yeah.
Sort of like two come in, one comes out.
Exactly.
Masculinity. Thank you. So right here in the middle, please. Yes.
Hello, my name is David Cuevas from Canada. I have a question for John and Jesse. Your film is very stark, it's very real, but it's very disturbing, but it's also incredibly presential to the current times that we're experiencing. More specifically, I was reminded by the Andrew Tate scandal that's currently going on in Romania. I was wondering if there's any similarities between your narrative, if there was inspiration with real-life cases in correlation with the Andrew Tate concerns. Thank you.
I actually only found out about Andrew Tate very recently. I think the kernel for the idea, precedes him certainly. But I think early on I was very clear that I didn't want to make a film about the internet, essentially, even though we were drawing a lot of ideas from this world. But from the beginning, there was this attempt to sort of pull away from that and create something a little bit more imagined and other. So I sort of deliberately resisted that topicality, knowing that it was already kind of in a triggering and immediate space. So yeah, there's no direct correlation with Andrew Tate, and thank God for that. Yeah.
We have a question here in the middle.
Hello, Wazir Christopher for Derek Radio from Bulgaria. This is a question for the whole cast, and especially for Mr. Brody and Mr. Eisenberg. Talents like Tony Kaye, Andrew Dominic, David Fincher, and others. You've worked with them, Adrian and Jesse, but I have a question for the whole film cast. What would you say makes the director, Mr. Trent Grove, different or unique compared to other directors that you've worked for? This is important for me because the film is very different and very the details are very thoughtfully executed. Thank you very much.
Shall I answer that? Please. I'm very impressed with John, and when I saw his film, The Wound, I was very moved by that, and the complexity within the storytelling and the nuances and the performances and I guess there's something very similar within Manodrome, thematically, and what speaks to me so much about John's work and what he's managed to capture within the writing and the storytelling and the creation of these characters is beyond grappling with masculinity or very blatant issues within society as a whole. It's really about the disconnect with what we intrinsically know as the truth and what we are bombarded with, which becomes the truth. And all of our collective doubts and past traumas and unresolved issues that create these fractured lives, which we see throughout the world, and the repercussions are endless. And to be able to tell stories like that in a touching way that are very real but heightened and relatable is a very unique trait. And I just think John has a unique way of tapping into that sensitivity within all of us, and also assembling a wonderful cast. And every actor here brought such depth and commitment to the project, which is what another quality of John's is he's very thorough, I would say, in the vetting of who is the right person to inhabit the character that he had envisioned. And John and I spent months communicating before I had this role, discussing the character and finding it and finding truths to that and having it evolve into a very complex, tormented person that somehow feeds on Jesse's character's own inner turmoil and identifies with that.
Hi, Deborah Cole from AFP News Agency. I have a question for both Jesse and Adrien. This issue of masculinity in crisis, strikes me as a global one. But what makes this story particularly American is when the gun, enters the drama. And I was wondering if you could talk about that. This dramatic turn in the story when it becomes so violent and bodies start dropping.
Yeah. That's an interesting perception. As an American reading a script about this kind of dangerous spiraling into based on dangerous ideas about masculinity, it seemed like a very logical progression into gun violence. But I suppose because this is an international audience, especially in Germany where laws and ideas around guns are so different, I suppose it will play as something particularly American. To me, when I read it, just seemed like a very logical conclusion to this bleak tragedy.
You're not wrong that, we're afflicted by gun violent epidemic, but I agree with Jesse that to me too it feels like a natural progression where there's unchecked aggression within an individual that is being harnessed and it's stemming from myriad insecurities. Violence and lashing out in some form of violence seems logical, and guns are readily available. Not exclusively in America, but we do have access to weapons, and they are used. And it is it's part of the tragic storytelling.
Thank you very much. We have a question right here in the middle.
Yeah, hello. My question is about inner peace of mind. And right now you had very good comment about what is truth. And if this peace of mind is truth, I really think that you really have this one. And how can we keep this? How do you work on it around this is violent, this is crazy, this is angry world? How can we keep our peace of mind inside?
Myself or my
Yes, yourself is much interesting for me.
Living gives you perspective. So when you're younger, you have less perspective, and I can speak from experience. I was much more reactive when I was younger and emotionally led, and it's something that John and I actually discussed with regards to Dad Dan and his relationship to Ralphie, and it's an interesting thing to find ways of being more present. And I think when you are present, you're able to quiet all the distractions, both internal and external, and align with your own sense of truth. And I think that's something that personally I've been fortunate to be able to cultivate as an actor, because I have to put myself in other people's shoes, and I've done that for a lifetime. And I can identify with problems that are universal that have existed in the past, that exist today, and try and find, ways through that or answers to those, and, but you have to catch me on a good day sometimes, but I'll always tell you the truth, that's for sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a question here on the right-hand side.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Congratulations. It's Stephen Schaefer from the Boston Herald. This is for Jesse. Hi, Adrian.
How are you, sir?
Good. This is something, a truly surprising character to see you play this, Jesse. What's it all about with Ralphie? We learn about his trauma as a childhood, but is that all it is about him? He's nonverbal and then he explodes. And for Odessa, your relationship with him, it's kind of like an angry mother that she's tending to him and can't wait to get away from him.
Thank you.
That's what she was going for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what you said to Odessa is implies that he's a child, which felt right to me too, that he's kind of infantilized and stunted. But I think of the movie more like a fever dream of a movie where there's not like where it's not really a dissection of this person's Freudian psychology, looking at his childhood and understanding why he winds up the way he is. I think of it more like this visceral fever dream where this guy is like living faster than he can, faster than his mind can. And so I don't think of it as like a logical extension from childhood trauma, even though it is presented by John and there are certain hints as to where his kind of trauma comes from. But I think of him just as like a guy who can't catch up to his behavior. And then in terms of like relationship with Odessa's character, he's like so infantilized that he kind of requires a mother figure, which she provides, but it's obviously not sustainable for a relationship.
Yeah, I think that I can see Sal probably giving Ralphie a lot of time to catch up to his own behavior, and I think that's kind of ultimately where the movie ends up, where their story ends up, is that she's run out of time, he's run out of time. And also there's a kind of, she is the mother figure, but she's also like kind of far more complex than Ralphie is being told she is. Like, she is also kind of physically violent. She is the one making the money, this narrative that that this group has kind of given him of her is one that you slowly start to see not matching up. So I think that the kind of maternal quality of Sal is probably one that Ralphie has imposed upon her, and that out of care or exhaustion she's had to kind of take on for herself.
Great.
Probably, but I don't know.
Great, thank you. We have, sorry, am I cutting you where you?
No,
finished?
sorry.
All right. Before we go to the question all the way in the back, I'm going to ask you, because there's so many of you raising your hands, could you just raise your hands again so my colleagues can spot you and they can come afterwards to you? Can you see them? Great, thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Hello, Catalina Eleona, Romanian magazine Conștiința. At the end of the film, we see Ghița Mureșan, a Romanian basketball player and actor, and the film ends with him singing a Romanian lullaby, Nani Nani Puișor. Was it just a coincidence that he was Romanian, he's coming from Romanian, or does it have a particular meaning or more deeper level, more deeper? Thank you.
George was just the most wonderful person who walked into our lives. We were looking for somebody really special and somebody who was somehow other, who didn't feel like he was from the world, but sort of an outsider. And we sort of, got hold of him quite spontaneously and reached out and in a way just assumed that he would read the script and not be interested. And it was sort of the opposite. He responded very strongly and he ended up bringing such an incredible tenderness to the film. And in a way, what I spoke with George was this idea that he perhaps brings some kind of antidote or some other model of masculinity and fatherhood that is sort of absent from the film into the film right at the end. So no, his specific Romanianness was not intentional, although I'm obviously a huge fan of Romanian cinema. And the song that he sings at the end was completely improvised by him. We were literally about to roll camera, and I said to George, "Isn't there some kind of lullaby or something that you could sing?" And he just came up with this. It was so special. It was so special. But yeah, George was like a blessing. He was this wonderful, gentle energy that entered our world, and I couldn't have been more pleased to have met him and gotten to know him. He's a fascinating guy.
Thank you. We have one all the way here in the back.
Hi, I'm Dimitra from Greece. This is a very disturbing but actual and significant topic that you bring. What I would like to ask is that you don't show only the guns in this kind of masculinity crisis, but also it is fed from a more general crisis. So my question is, this showing of sects like this one, is it an implication of alt-right or other sects that are not based on, they are based on real problems that the contemporary American citizen faces? They criticize what's going on, but what they have to provide is something dangerous and sometimes irrational. So this otherness that exists inside American society, do you feel that there's a danger and you want to show that it may give power to this kind of phenomena?
Well, I mean, you talk about the alt-right, and that was part of where, I was reading up about them and these other groups for the first time when I started writing this, and since then they had become much more mainstream. But like I said earlier, it was sort of important for me not to make a film about the alt-right or to make a film about internet culture. But what I did do, and what was interesting for me, as a queer filmmaker, was to say, well, what if we take these ideas and we bring them into this kind of chosen family of men, which is a very sort of queer idea of groups who feel in some ways disenfranchised or marginalized, who then come together and create their own communities as a way of rehabilitation and self-healing. And so that was really what became the Manodrome. And if I'm understanding your question correctly, I'm not sure, like, does it normalize kind of, extreme ideology? Well, I think that was partly what was interesting to me, is how radical ideology reaches the mainstream. And I think we see this in American politics, all the time now. How these, housewives in the Midwest are suddenly kind of, picking up assault rifles and reading up on, neo-Nazi ideology. And there is a way in which our culture is sort of moving so quickly, and probably because of the internet. And so things kind of tend to blur in all sorts of disturbing ways. But the idea that kind of radical ideology and extreme ideas about masculinity could somehow be, find this sort of softer domestic space, I thought was very interesting. And I feel like with all the characters in the film, and with Jesse's character in particular, this idea of softness, and men who are, in some ways running from their own softness, and in some ways, embracing extreme ideas about masculinity and still being sort of soft and domesticated, that was sort of a recurring interest for me.
Maybe on that note, we can ask Philip and Salü to maybe add on that, because both your characters are very much in that line as well. I mean, there's many different layers of masculinity, but it would be great if you could tell us a little bit more about how, you know, like John was saying, it reflects in your character and how you approached it.
Sure. Well, I think for Amit specifically, he's got the outer shell of a bodybuilder. So on initial glance, he doesn't seem like he would have a softer side to him. But I think that softer side that he has is what allows for Jesse's character to be vulnerable. And I think that vulnerability is maybe something, you know, Ralphie is not really expecting to feel and to come out. And I think when that occurs, it might be kind of shocking and jolting to Ralphie, which leads to, you know, the progression of what he does next. So, yeah, I think Amit's sort of a catalyst, I would say, to the trajectory of the story overall.
Yeah, with Jason, I don't know, I kind of, and I talked to John about this, but just with myself, or just grappling what it means to be a man in today's society, or what you're told how you should be or how you should look, or dealing with someone who maybe life hasn't worked out the way that they were hoping it would work out, and who holds this pain that they don't know what to do with. Like Salü, like trying to build a literal body of armor to grapple with softness or pain or emotion when you don't really have a good example for how to navigate that in today's world and be a successful person for whatever that means. So yeah, this whole script, and also just what I found interesting in Jason is he's just trying to like figure out who he is and what it means to be a man, and what how he feels in connecting to people, and not feeling so alone, and you know, just trying to find his way.
Thank you very much. We have one all the way on the right-hand side.
Hi. This is Luis from Spanish magazine El Antepenúltimo Mohicano. Congratulations to all the team, cast and crew. I've got a question for John. John, would you say that in the film there are some elements of religious, or let's say Catholic power structure, especially male Catholic power structure, and how does that integrate with the online manosphere communities?
I wouldn't say Catholic exactly, but obviously there is this sort of, it is a kind of a strange Christmas movie in a way. And that was very much intentional. I wrote the first draft of the screenplay over Christmas, and there was something about the kind of the sort of perversity of bringing these dark themes, you know, into this so supposedly festive but also very problematic ritual that is so saturated in consumerism and in a way has you know, lost a lot of meaning. And then that extended to the baby being born on Christmas Day, and so there is a bit of a sort of a Christ idea that drifts through the film. But that was really more my interest in, again, pulling away from documentary or reality and bringing it into something a little bit more mythological and imagined. We are sort of with a character whose grip on reality is questionable, and I think I tried to kind of prompt the audience to question what they were seeing from an early point in the film. And I think a lot of the tension in the film resides from that, of being so close to this character and yet not completely being able to trust his experience, his decision making, and so that terror, that kind of unnerving experience of that, I think, was very much part of how I saw this journey. So I wouldn't say direct parallels to religion, but perhaps more a way in which, in a kind of modern context, these rituals have become sort of distorted and hollow.
Hello, my name is Mac, and I'm from Canada, and my question is for John. In the movie, Adrien's character does a bit of a seduction to Ralphie by telling him, I think it was, you have the look of someone who no one's ever showed up for, and allowing him to have that vulnerability inside of the home and when they're together. And I was wondering, what do you think it says about men, or are you trying to say that men can only ever really feel vulnerable and feel free to be vulnerable around other men?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that men grapple with generally, is that the world is underfathered and generally speaking, and that's, I think, a big crisis that we face now is men, because they are repressing emotion, they don't learn or acquire basic life skills about how to deal with feelings and emotion. So I think, you know, you have the situation where you have grown men in the world who have the sort of internal resources of little boys, and then having to kind of hide that and overcompensate with sort of hyper-aggression and posturing. So with this group that I invented for the film, it was this idea that Dan can spot these guys who are feeling frustrated, weak, angry, like nobody showed up for them. It's literally his line in the film, and that he can provide some kind of haven for them. And I think somebody said it earlier, but there's a kind of double-edged sword there. Of course, it can be rehabilitating and it can be a kind of nurturing space, but when a character goes through the kind of what we call the confessional scene, those sort of group therapy moments, it's also a way of kind of breaking somebody down and to begin to inject ideology. So there's a kind of complicated space there that is navigated.
It's Ana from a Spanish magazine, La Cartelera Turia. This is a question from John, and I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more the relationship between money, masculinity, and power, because we see that during the movie, money plays a huge role when he wants to have these sneakers, or when he goes in order to sell the phone. So I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more what role money plays in the movie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm generally just interested in the class struggle and how people are products of their socioeconomic background. And it sometimes feels to me that American films can kind of resist talking about those things. But I thought it was interesting just to create a kind of gap between Ralphie and the men of the Manodrome, that there's a certain kind of bourgeois comfort in the way that they live and exercise this community, that it's something that is almost a kind of weekend pleasure for them, that it sort of sits comfortably in their lives, but for a guy like Ralphie, who is literally fighting to get by, fighting for his life economically, it means something very different to kind of come into this space. And then the sort of shame and the impotence of being somebody without those kinds of resources, being ingratiated into a group of people who are more well off. It felt to me that it made the stakes very different for his character.
Hi, here. I wanted to ask about the baby, because have you think about making a second part about the son? Because there is a Spanish, like the baby that is just born, what happened to him? Because there is an interesting connection that Pasolini makes about the Greek tragedy, saying that the sons inherit the guiltiness or the bad actions of the fathers.
The baby was a kind of an interesting way of really splitting Ralphie's sense of himself. So I think he's a character who essentially, he's not motivated in a way the world sort of just happens to him, but he's got these two conflicting ideas of himself. And the one is somebody who desperately wants to be a father and a provider and perhaps be the father for a child that he didn't have himself. But then at the same time feeling like a little boy and being desperate to have a father figure and to belong to some kind of family structure and to be mentored and raised. And so it's that kind of split idea that I think is very, very interesting. And in a way, the baby becomes a kind of metaphor for Ralphie. There's references to his inner child and protecting that child and fix it so that nobody ever hurts that inner child again, I think is a line of Dan's. So the baby entering to the world in the world is very much about Ralphie, both trying to be strong enough to take care of himself and also being that helpless infant.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. I'm very, very sorry we are out of time. Thanks for all of your questions and for coming. And congratulations to you all. Good luck tonight in your world premiere, Manodrome.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I don't know where I am.